The GallowgateShots podcast is sponsored by Tyre Spot, the North East's leading tyre supplier with branches across the region. Tyre Spot don't just do tyres, they cover everything from servicing to wheel alignment. They can handle every aspect of your car's maintenance. For more information, visit tyrespot.co.uk. Enjoy the episode.
Hi everybody, welcome back to the GallowgateShots YouTube and podcast channel. We are back with another match preview. This week we are going to take a look towards the home game against Nottingham Forest. It's Scott here, and I am joined this week by Kris and Andy. Boys, how are we feeling about this one? This is the third time playing Nottingham this season. Seems to be a bit of a trend. We're hoping for a bit of a better result than last season's home fixture.
Yeah, I didn't want to be reminded about it, to be honest. The day that we all suddenly thought Chris Wood was a world beater, and everyone still thinks that now for some reason. But just remember Sheffield Wednesday.
Just remember Sheffield Wednesday, yeah. Prime Pele, he turned into last season, didn't he, Chris, with that hat-trick?
Like Andy said, he still is Prime Pele. Like,
is, yeah.
he's absolutely rinsing everybody, and he's rinsing all of us lot. I called him shite from day one. But like,
he was, though.
He was, and he still is. Like, he still is.
We cannot forget that he was crap for us. Like,
you've got Chris Wood and Matt Sells, who did out for us, and then they've turned into just Buffon and Pele for no reason at Nottingham Forest.
They've done well. Like, they've done really well to turn that around.
Give them the credit, absolutely. Anyways, yes. We've gone for a bit of a tangent there, but not so much. It is Sunday, the 23rd of February. It's a 2 p.m. kickoff at St James's Park. And if you haven't got a ticket, you didn't win the ballot, it is on Sky this week for a Sunday game, not on TNT, on Sky. They're currently doing very well this season, having a scorcher of a season on Nottingham. Third in the league on 47 points. It's 14 wins, 5 draws and 6 defeats. They've scored 41 goals and they've only conceded 29. So they're pretty solid at the back. It gives them a plus 12 goal difference. And as always, I've got a few commentator stats to go through before we get started. So here we go. These are actually a lot better reading than last week. So let's hope that's a good omen for this game. Newcastle have lost just one of their 13 Premier League meetings with Nottingham Forest. That's 9 wins and 3 draws. Though the defeat did come in this exact fixture last season, which we've talked about, which was that 3-1 defeat. Nottingham Forest won this exact fixture 3-1 last season, ending a run of 7 consecutive league defeats at St James's Park. Their last one, back-to-back visits at St James's in August 1987 to October 1988. Newcastle have lost 3 of their last 4 Premier League matches with only 1 win, more than in their previous 12 combined, with 8 wins, 2 draws and 2 losses. We haven't lost more than 2 league games in a row since December to January 2023 to 2024, where there was 4 in a row. Forest have lost their last 2 away Premier League matches, having won their previous 4 away games. Forest are looking to avoid losing 3 in a row for the first time since December 2023 under their former manager Steve Cooper. And finally, Newcastle have lost their last 2 Premier League games at St James's Park, last losing 3 in a row at home back in January to February 2021 under Steve Bruce. Manager Eddie Howe hasn't lost 3 consecutive league matches on home soil since November-December 2019 when he was boss of Bournemouth. Chris?
Yes.
How confident are you? Given the performances that we've had, and let's be honest, Man City was absolutely honking. Game we've got coming up, and obviously the big important game we've got coming up as well. West Ham is a big game, with the final. How confident are you that we can pull something out of the bag for this one, or do you think the players have got one eye on that Wembley final? Something's going on there in the heads, and people are maybe scared of getting injured. Do you think there's something going on in the heads, or do you think it's just by the by and that the Man City was a one-off?
I would be very, very worried if the players were already thinking about that cup final. I mentioned on the Monday show that we did that. Yes, I could understood it a little bit when we're going into the second leg against Arsenal in the semi-final, because obviously we didn't show up. It was a Bournemouth that we played just before that, and got what Arsenal's handed to it. But going in, I think the Man City game, it was just one of those games. It's an Etihad, and we always stink the place out. Like each year, we're going to that fixture and saying, right, now is our time that we're going to get a result there. It's the best time ever to play Man City, blah, 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 blah. And it always comes and bites us back on the arse every single time. I know like Shira came out and was like, oh, the Vol definitely had one eye on the cup fight. I'm not having it. It's 3 weeks away. Like, I'm definitely not having it. I'd be very worried about the players' mentality if they were looking at that. Yes, it might be in the back of the mind slightly, but I don't think that should have any sort of impact in regards to performances right here and right now, because you got to think of the Premier League campaign. The more successful you are in that, the more chance you're going to have of like European football. And at the end of the day, it's European football that I want. Yes, a cup final is great, and a League Cup would be fantastic as well. But you're not there yet. You're in the final. You haven't won it yet, so just simmer down a little bit. But I'm not falling for it. I'm not buying it. I don't think that has any sort of hindrance on these performances at the moment. I think it's just we don't know what our identity is at the moment. We'll see it one week where Newcastle are absolutely fantastic, the best of the best. Then we'll see it another week where we'll look like relegation fodder some weeks. And you're thinking, right, well, what's the even ground here? Like, what sort of team we're going to see turn up? And I think it's flip of a coin most weeks. And
it feel like a throwback to the relegation years, didn't it? That game against Man City.
The Man City one, honestly, you could have picked that performance up and removed every player's name, and you wouldn't know if that was a Mike Ashley Newcastle under the likes of Steve McLaren, whoever it may have been at the time.
All of the Steves.
I know any of the Steves. But I don't know. It's just I don't know what team's going to turn up. But we'll mention this quite a lot. We'll find out in the first 10 minutes of that game at St James's Park if we're up for it.
Yeah, and does the fact, Andy, that it's at home give you a little bit of, and I'm going to coin a phrase from one of the Steves, a bit of hope that maybe you'll get a bit more from the players that they do. I mean, saying that we've lost the last two, obviously 3 now at league games and at St James's. It's been a while since we've won at home. But does it give you that little bit of confidence going into a game, thinking, well, we're at home? You'd like to think the lads have performed, especially given the previous performance. You'd like to think maybe we can pull this one out of the bag, and but I don't want to say pulling out the bag, because you'd like to think going into a game against Forest we're on an even steading, but they are flying high themselves, and they'll be full of confidence going into this one.
Yeah, you'd like to think so. Obviously, if you look at the whole era of how so far the home form's been one of the main positives, the home form's been amazing. St James's has generally been a fortress, especially in those big games. And it's always been the away form where we've said, what are we doing? We're amazing at home, but then we can't beat such and such away. And we always had shockers. And then in recent sort of months and weeks, it's been the opposite, where we're sort of pretty reliable away from home. And then you have the Fulham home game, you have the Bournemouth home game, where we obviously got absolutely trounced. But then it's frustrating, because then you see us play against Arsenal in the cup at home, and it's like prime Real Madrid could have come that day and not beaten us, because we were just so up for it. Yeah. So it's almost like, as a fan base, we're similar to the team in that some days we're really up for it and some days we're not. So I think it's just important that the fan base realise that all of these games now are big games. It's so tight at the moment. We've gone from thinking we're absolute shoo-ins for the Champions League to all of a sudden people saying that we're not going to get Europe at all. And all we did was lose a game. And people forget that we won 9 in a row, like a few weeks before that. So it's mad, really. But if the crowd's up for it, and like I agree with Chris, I don't think the cup final can have that much of an impact. Maybe 1 or 2% on your performance level if there's like a 50-50 or whatever. But generally, I don't think Eddie Howe would ever let them just forget about the rest of the season now. Yeah. Because then it just looks stupid if we then go and lose that cup final, because we've just give up on the rest of the season.
It is the last 2 league home games, I think, Scott, isn't it? We lost to Fulham and Bournemouth. It was because we got that 3-0, was it, against Wolves? 3-1, 3-1, 3-0, 3-0, I think it was against Wolves. I think it was actually one of your stats at the start. Was that not one of your commentator stats?
It was. I didn't even read it. I read it
Got it
without
already.
even already. Yeah, I mean, if we talk a little bit about Forest, Kris, you've been watching a couple of their fan previews. Are they confident? What are they? What are they like?
Well,
This? We've already beat them twice this season. Once in the
you're
league.
pushing it,
Once
mate. I didn't watch a couple. I watched one. So I've got quite a small sample size. Yeah. I watched one, and do you know what is the way they were presented was very. Do you know what is it? You could have had this conversation, the same conversation what they were having as a Newcastle fan a couple of seasons back when we got fourth. Their conversation was basically they're in shock right now about where they are in the league. They've just had a bad performance against Fulham, and looking at the stats from that game, they weren't great. Far from it against Fulham, and they're saying right now, despite them sitting in third, one of the lads on there was, if you offer me conference football right now in European football, I'll snap your hand off. And I'm thinking, Jesus, he's sat in third and doing really well. So
they were in a title race last month, apparently.
I know it's strange. But honestly, it was very similar to listen to us and the thinking that the club weren't expecting to be in this position. So the likes of investment, you can kind of see creeping up on them now at the point where, yes, they've got a decent start in 11, but to change things that they're struggling to do that in certain points of games, which we were in the same position. Obviously, a lot of ours was due to injury and stuff like that, but back to investment as well. In regards to the game, there's a couple of things, mate. One of them was very complimentary about Newcastle United and saying that we can't get too confident because what happened in the reverse fixture. We went down there and we battered them that night. We really did. Mm-hmm. But he ends his prediction by saying that they're going to get a 1-0 victory at St James's Park. Which you can say to a certain degree, obviously, with our home performances at the moment. You wouldn't be shocked with that sort of result. The other one was a bit more on the fence. I think there was going to be a draw. One of a couple of things which I wanted to mention. I don't think they had done the homework to a great extent because they mentioned that when they're comparing the two seasons between Newcastle and where Forest are at the moment, they're saying Newcastle have the option of a £30+ million player coming off the bench in Joe Willock. We've seen Joe Willock's performances this season.
Like a £30 million player.
They haven't been great, yeah. So to say we've got an option of Joe Willock to come in and replace Joe Linton, yes, it's an option, but there's a huge difference between those two players, not just playing style, but everything. Quality, a huge one.
Wasn't he only 26 million as well? Anyway,
it was something like that. But I didn't take too much offense with that one. But I was just thinking we're probably in a similar sort of position right now where we've had to sell players, and yes, we're strongest starting 11 is very good. It's really good group of lads that we've got, but we've got zero option to change it. Likes of Callum Wilson's back from injury as well. And for now. To be fair, they mentioned this on the Forest podcast I was listening to, saying that Newcastle don't really have much option up top, and they've only really got Isak. They don't have anybody else that can come in, but they completely forgot Wilson up until a certain point where it's easy to forget Wilson being available. But the thing I annoyed us slightly, and I want your opinion on it as well. I think I probably already know, but the guest that they had on compared Newcastle fans to Everton fans.
And I'm not.
I know. And he went, the very similar to you went. It's a very bad comparison, but the very similar to Everton fans. And I was like, what? And they went, if we get an early goal, then the fans will turn immediately on the players. And I thought,
we won't. We'll just all go for a pint instead.
Yeah, like don't put us in the same basket as Everton fans. Like just calm down a bit. But yeah, do you know what it is? It was a mixed bag between the two lads. I think they're probably looking at this fixture very similar to how we're going to predict it as well, and thinking depends which team turns up today, because they're in a similar sort of position that they had a bad performance, like I said, against Fulham, but they've had such a great season so far as well, with tiny little blips in there. Where our issue right now seems to be getting 2 wins back to back. Yes, we had those 9 on the bounce, but since then it's been up and down. Isak hasn't scored in 4 games, I think it is now. So it's honestly it's a very mixed bag. So many similarities between the
They
two,
are a
though.
weird one to predict because, like, you think, oh, they just lost to Fulham. They were pretty lucky to get through against Exeter, had to go through on penalties. So you think, oh, they're a bit out of form. But then they won 7-0 the game before that.
Well, the thing is that they kept on reverting back to our result against Bournemouth and saying, well, you just look at what Bournemouth did to them. But didn't Bournemouth go to Forest the week after and absolutely pummel them as well?
It was at Bournemouth, but they beat them 5-0. Yeah.
Yeah, pummeled them, didn't they?
Mhm.
So you think you can't really say that you have horses handled to when you've done it exactly the same the week after.
Yeah, they're a tricky side to play though, Forest. I mean, obviously, Andy, we've played them twice this season. Obviously, we did beat them twice, but one did have to go to penalties in that game as well. We have to remember that that wasn't an easy game, that Carabao Cup game. I think it was a Sean Longstaff, the final penalty on that one. It was a long slog for that game, if I remember rightly. So, it's going to be a tough game. They do like to play fast counter-attacking football, and at the moment, we don't have that much pace at the back, which could be a problem on the weekend.
Yeah, I remember the away leg last year. Well, I probably shouldn't talk about it too much in case my banning order comes through. But when that game, Alanga was tearing the defence a new hole constantly. But this was the period of the season where Dubravka was stuck on his line.
Was he up
refused
against
to come
was
out.
Burn on the left hand side? Was Burn playing left back that game?
It was
Yeah.
Burn, and I was there with a mate, and within the first 5 minutes, we both just looked at each other and just said, "This is going to be rough." And obviously, we managed to get the win, but defensively, we looked like we were really struggling with the pace. I do think we deal with that kind of team better than we maybe have done in the past.
Yeah.
But it's like we've said, it depends which team turns up. We've seen us do amazing things where the centre backs push up ridiculously high and stop teams from doing those transitions. But then if you get Dan Burn facing his own goal, Botman facing his own goal, Shah, they don't have any pace at all, really. I mean, we say that Shah brings a bit more pace to the defence, but it's like going from 30 pace to 40 pace on FIFA. It's not much of an improvement at all. So I do worry about that. Gibbs White's been amazing this year. Aina, the fullback's been great. But defensively, they've been absolute brick wall as well. Like you say, Sells is looking like a great keeper. They've got that Murillo, who's an absolute beast. Just got good players all across the pitch. But we can't forget that, unlike us sitting still for 3 transfer windows, they did have a transfer window where they bought, 25 players? So they've done what a lot of teams need to do when they sort of solidify themselves in the Premier League, and it's just go for it. And they have the resources to do that. And obviously, we think they maybe have got into some bother with FFP. But thankfully, we did a bit of a dodgy deal with them, where we bought a keeper that's never played. Tricky one
as well, haven't they? I think they was it. I can't remember who it was now, but they sold a player for like 70 million or something, which is, patched that massive PSR hole that they had. Was it in the summer they sold quite a big player? Although maybe the winter before.
Flank Demos. That's who those 70 million.
Yeah, I mean, there was that. Obviously, they've also got Elliot Anderson. We can't really go without touching on him, Chris, the player that should never really have had to sell, but we did sell. I don't know how much he's playing. I haven't really been following him much, but I think Gibbs White keeps him out of the team when he's fit. We saw the scenes at the end of the cup game of him looking back towards the away end of us getting the plaudits, and it was kind of we don't really like to see that, but it was also you're not our player anymore. We shouldn't really be seeing those scenes. But it wasn't nice to see. But would you like to see him get a game out at St James's Park against us, or do you want him to stay on that bench and not haunt with?
So this was touched on. This was touched on as well. And the lads on the Forest podcast said that they need a partner to go alongside Anderson, because Anderson's just made that position his own in the middle of the park. I did a preview earlier on in the season with a Forest fan for the reverse fixture, and at that point of the season, they were kind of figure out what sort of player Anderson was in regards to what position is his best position. But I think
that conversation, didn't we? We didn't really.
Yeah, so honestly, it was really similar, because I think we were using him a bit on the left hand side for a little while. Similar to what we had done at times. And I think, so from earlier on, I think I was saying Gibbs White was struggling to get in the team, but I think that was due to injury and returning.
Yeah.
Then he was coming back from injury. I think it might have been the game after we played them that he was back. But from what they were saying on the first preview side of things is that Anderson, they need to get a partner alongside him because he's been fantastic this season, one of the players of the season. And they said he's only had a couple of games where he's looked poor, but they mentioned that was just him. That was the full team performance. So he's doing really well for them. And it just kind of proves our point, doesn't it, that we're good at the same goal because we're kind of classing this season and probably back into last season is going to be his breakthrough season until he got injured at that point. Then it was a shame for him. I think if he was here, I think if he was here now, you'd probably see the likes of possibly somebody like Lewis Miley getting loaned out for some game time. But I think it's a fact. Well, probably Longstaff getting sold could have been another option as well. But I think because Wahan was forced, that unfortunately was the player that had to go in the other direction. And I was going to miss out. Like honestly, I was going to lose him. But he's doing unbelievably well, and it'd be great to see him back at St James's Park as long as he's on the side of the losing team, mind. But
he ironically should have already had a goal at the City Ground because he had that goal where we all thought he'd finally scored for us, and it was the most ridiculous offside, if you remember. Poor lad. And then we sold him.
Only player that season, he was the only first team player not to score that season. If I remember correctly,
record that we just didn't break, wasn't it? Where every first team player had scored.
Every other player had scored, and he was the only one. I'm sure that's correct. He was the only one that hadn't scored. I know.
If we turn our attentions to us for a second, Andy, we've seen a couple of different formations be played over the past few weeks. There's the 4-4-3 and there's the hybrid 3-5 at the back that we saw against Arsenal. And we also, I think, was tried against Man City, but it failed quite miserably. What do you think?
And the 5-5-0, Scott, and the 5-5-0. Don't forget that
5-5-0. But we don't really want that 5-5-0 to ever rear its ugly head again if it doesn't need to. But what do you think we go for this? Do you think it's back to a 4-4-3 against Forest, or do you think because of the pace and the injury issues we've potentially got at the back and some players looking not that fit in certain areas of the pitch, do you think we stick with that hybrid? I don't even know what to call it, but the 3 at the back that turns into a 5 at the back, which is relying on wing backs. Do we keep with that? Like, what do you think we go for when it comes to this game at the weekend?
Yeah, well, I think the 5 at the back thing, that's very much if the other team's going to have more of the ball, isn't it? It's just shoring up, defending your 18-yard box. But I think sometimes we get bogged down on formation, and really it's about what system you're playing. When you put it on a tactics board, it's 4-3-3, but we know there's been times where Joe Linton's meant to be one of those left-sided number 8s and he's randomly stood at left wing back. There's times where he's a number 10 and it's more of a 4-2-3-1. But I mean, on the team sheet, it will probably look like a 4-3-3 again against Forest. We know that Joe Linton's been a big miss, certainly defensively. I think he's been a bit ropey on the ball this year, but in those situations where you've got lots of big lads and you need an extra body to defend, he's good for that. He's obviously good at defending those sort of counter attacks as well. But I think it will be 4-3-3. It's what Eddie Howe knows. I imagine he will tweak it slightly to try and make it a bit more protective of the midfield. It might be more of a 4-2-3-1 type thing. It might be more like we saw in the early Eddie Howe days, where Willock's more of a sort of proper, well, I say proper winger. Sort of, I'm going to sound so knobby, but like an inside forward sort of false winger, if you know what I mean. I know. False 10. What was it Steve Bruce used to say? False 10s. Which just meant the midfielder, but you know what I mean. He used to play that sort of like inside channel, didn't he, with Joe Linton and things like that. So it might be something like that. Obviously, we're not paid to be great managers. He is, and I'm sure there's times with Howe where you think he's an absolute genius and there's no manager that can beat him. You think about the times he's beaten Emery, the times he's had Mikel Arteta's number. Then he just has these games where all of a sudden we just think, what is he doing? Has he even done any research or any planning for this? But it's got to be 4-3-3. It's how we get the best out of our best players. We can't forget that this midfield tweak we did halfway through the season completely revolutionized the team. And there will be times where it doesn't always work. We just need to not have a meltdown as a fan base when you go to the most dominant team in the Premier League history and lose.
So does Willock start for you, Andy, or is it? Do you think it's back to Longstaff, or do you think Miley gets a run out? Because I think it's a given that it's going to be Bruno and Tonali in the middle. Who do you pair with, or who do you add to that trio in the middle? Is it, do you think it's Willock that keeps his spot, or
In
who
an
do you
ideal world, I'd like to see Miley come in. I think he's just he brings a bit more control and a bit more. It's weird. I almost wanted to say experience. It's not that because obviously he's a Ben still, but he just feels like he's more of a calm head than the other two.
more solidity, isn't it?
Yeah, Willock. I really want him to do well because he's obviously been so good for us. In his sort of early days, even going back to Steve Bruce when he scored in 6 games in a row, whatever it was. The lad is just so shot for confidence, and even after that Birmingham game, he still doesn't look like he's there. But again, it's the Man City game. No one was particularly good, so I'd like to see Willock. I'd really want to see him get back to his best, and I think the only way you can get that out of him is just to try and force him into form a little bit. But it's like you say, we'll know within the first 10 minutes whether he's going to have one of those anonymous games or whether he's going to have, like the Spurs home game a couple of years ago. Longstaff, I think he's had a bit of a drop off in his form as well. There's times where he gets caught on the ball far too easily, but again, he brings you that sort of unseen quality of his engine and how tactically, I don't think he gets enough credit for how tactically astute he is and how much Howe trusts him to put a game plan into place. So it'd be interesting to see. It's nice to have the option again, but I'd certainly like to have Big Joe back for the final.
I think we're at that point now where we've mentioned so many times on previews and reactions or whatever it is we've done as a podcast is that we've said numerous occasions that there isn't a player like Joe Linton in world football. And you can see that as clear as day now. We've got plenty of options there to fill a void in that midfield three in the likes of Willock, Miley, and Longstaff. But those 3 players are completely different to Joe Linton, not even close to the same player and what he does as a team. And Andy's mentioned the likes of position-wise where you fill in a void at likes of left wing back and things like that. And that helps Hall. And I think we've seen Hall struggle in games as well since Joe Linton hasn't been there, especially defensively. Do you know what it is? I think I'm a slightly different way of thinking to Andy with Joe Willock. I've been a big Joe Willock fan. I always have been. I've always been similar, thinking, right, he needs a run of games. But even when he gets those run of games, yes, he'll have one game out of those 3 where he'll look great. But then the rest of them, he's just average. You don't see much else. You haven't seen that progression from Willock as what you have with other players. Mm-hmm. And yes, that may be down to the issues which he's had, like some injuries, because he has been quite injury prone for a long time now at the club. Obviously, he's had all the crap going on off the field with all the racial stuff he's had on social media, which is absolutely horrendous. Of course, that's going to affect your confidence as well. But if we're just looking solely at football, I just don't think he's as good as what I always thought he was. I think he's struggling in games, and the fact that, just to go back to the fact that he's not really progressing, I think that's going to be his downfall here. I think he will be replaced. I wouldn't be surprised in the summer if he's replaced. And it just goes back to my point where, yes, you look at this and go £30 million player like the Forest fans were and saying you've got that option. When they're playing well. But you look at Miley, didn't cost a penny. And I think Miley going to come in is going to bring more to the team.
Yeah, I mean, we'd probably struggle to get 30 million for him in the summer. If we were to move him on at the moment, I don't know if we'd pull in that sort of fee from him, to be honest.
And I could be completely wrong. It could be a confidence thing. He might just need that run of games. He might need it, but we don't have that facility really just to give him.
I think I'm thinking with my heart more than my head. Like I just want him. I just want him to be back to his best. Yeah,
I think he's one of those players. I think he's a prime example of one of those players. When he doesn't play, he gets better in your mind. Then when he plays, you think, he's had a bad game. Then we'll start coming up with the excuses as to why he's had a bad game. I just think, yes, he's a decent player. I don't think he's any more than that. And I think the players around him now, because he's never really had these players around him that are kind of highlighting just their talent compared to his. Especially if you look at the 2 midfielders next to him, Bruno and Tonali, like the light years above him.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry, Joe. Well, I feel I've gone in on you there.
Sorry, Joe. Yeah. Well, he's not with us today. I don't know where he is, but Daryl couldn't be here to do Ref Watch, even though last week we made a big song and dance about getting him a soundtrack for Ref Watch, a little chant for Ref Watch, and we've got one for him. AI has done its wonders, and it's made a little jingle for Ref Watch and everything. So we're going to play the little jingle for him, and then he's going to get Ref Watch from Daryl, and then he can come back next week when I'm not here, and he can do Ref Watch live. So here's the little jingle, and then we're going to get Ref Watch. And I warn you now, this is AI made, so whatever. But here it is, and then we'll play Daryl's Ref Watch, and then we'll come back and do predictions. So here it is. It's very WWF, by the way. We need a video for this as well.
Yeah, people are just looking at our faces now.
We need flames or something to...
Hi everybody and welcome back to another edition of Ref Watch, this time for the game against Nottingham Forest on Sunday. Referee for this one will be Australia's own Jared Gillett. It's his second Newcastle game of the season, having taken charge of the 1-1 draw at home to Man City all the way back in September. He's recently been involved in 5 Newcastle United games on VAR duty. This includes Arsenal and Leicester at home. They were a 1-0 and 4-0 win respectively. And then away games at Chelsea, Crystal Palace and Leicester. Those games respectively 2-0 defeat, 1-1 draw and a 4-2 defeat. His Premier League record for this season stands at 7 games. He's actually done quite a few less than most of the top ranked officials in the country. Can only assume he's probably had some sort of injury which has kept him out of games for a significant period, which is why we then ended up seeing him on quite so many games on VAR duty. So in those 7 games that he's done so far this season, he's issued 33 yellow cards and he's yet to issue a Premier League red card this season. VAR for this one will be Peter Banks, last seen on VAR duty for the home defeat to Bournemouth, which was a 4-1 loss, and he was also in the middle of the 1-0 loss at home to Brighton back in October.
There we have it.
Cruise's very own Daryl.
Do you know what is right? If people are listening to the audio, please just jump in around about 30 minutes. Come on YouTube. Come and watch this video. Dasmo, I love you to bits, mate. Right? I've got a couple of things to mention here. So that introduction to that tune for Ref Watch does not suit Daryl's personality at all, because he can go Ref Watch. And secondly,
he wanted it to be heavy metal, so blame Matty for that.
Secondly, Dasmo, you got your work uniform on? What are you doing, man? Looks like you came from school.
Looks like he's about to go referee a snooker game.
But thanks for your input, Dasmo. Come back next week.
Yes, just for the Ref Watch. Boys, let's take our mind off the referees and let's turn to our predictions. Chris, mate, what's your prediction for this? What did the Forest lads predict? You say a 1-0 win,
score draw, and 1-0 victory at Forest. They said, yeah. I don't know. Like, honestly, it's so hard to predict at the minute. You've been a Newcastle fan. I've got no idea, if I'm being honest. We'll keep on saying we'll want a reaction to certain things, right? And yes, you do. So we're back in this situation. I feel like we do this every 3 or 4 weeks ago. We need a reaction. Yeah, every handful of weeks we'll do this, and we're back in that same boat, because that performance against Manchester City, no matter what you want to sugarcoat it with history at the Etihad, it was piss poor. Like it was a poor performance. It was horrendous, and the likes of Bruno rightly came out afterwards and just said it wasn't good enough. Said it was a lazy performance, and of course it was. So you think that the players will have enough pride to go and right that wrong? Because I think as a fan base going into that game, we're expecting more. Yes, maybe we weren't expecting to go there and take all 3 points, but we're expecting a hell of a lot better performance than what the lads delivered. So you're back at home now. You've got no excuses. Yes, you're going up against a decent team in Forest, but they're a wounded animal there as well. They're just coming back from a defeat against Fulham, and they're probably in the same position as us right now, saying they want a reaction. Let's not give them the chance. Let's go in and let's just prove that, like I said, in those first 10 minutes, that we're up for this, and let's put all those comments that we've had from the likes of the media and the likes of Shearer coming out and say they've obviously had one eye on the cup final. just don't even let them have that opinion and have that excuse waiting for you, because you know for fine well, if you don't get a result, that opinion is going to keep on resurfacing every single time you lose a game. So just wipe it out straight away. So I think we'll get beat. No, I'm joking. I think it'll be a tough game, but I think we will win 2-1.
Okay, Andy, what are you going for?
Yeah, I think similar, to be honest. I think this is just part of being, we say this quite often, it's just part of being a better team, in that you can lose one game and suddenly it feels like your season's over. I mean, I don't know how Liverpool and Man City did it when they were both competing for the title, and it was basically, if you don't get 100 points, your season's over. So it's mad. I do feel like this will be a reaction, like we said. Forest are no mugs, so I do think both teams will score. I just think they'll be fired up. We've got a lot of preparation time, a lot of rest behind us. Forest have got FA Cup games coming up, and big important games coming up as well for them. And I do think that they will tail off slowly as the season goes on. I don't think they'll necessarily get Champions League, but I mean they're a great team, and I want them to do it as long as it's not at our expense. So I'm going to say 2-1 myself. I think Isak to get back on the score sheet, and we'll say, just in my heart, if Willock's playing, he'll get a winner, and all will be well with him again.
And we'll have a big slice of humble pie at the end of it, won't we, Chris?
I'll be chowing on that, aren't I?
And Elliot Anderson will score for them. And he'll do the hands up, sorry celebration.
Nah, Eddie Anderson is not going to do the sorry. If he scores, he will celebrate, and I would as well.
Knee sliding.
He'll do a hand up Shearer celebration if he scores at the Gallowgate end.
As long as it's not like an Adebayor type celebration.
Well, you wouldn't have to run far.
The other side of the stadium. We run up the hill. I do think we'll win. I think we might even keep a clean sheet in this one. I think it'll be a very cagey game. I think both teams are going to want a reaction, like you've said, Andy, and like you've said, Chris, to their previous results. And I think that'll make the game it'll be quite standoffish. I think both teams will be quite afraid to make a mistake in defence. And because of that, I think it's going to be, I don't know, I don't think you're going to see the teams take a lot of chances, and they're not going to want to make too many mistakes at the back. So I'm going I still think we'll score a couple of goals. I think it'll be 2-0. I'm not going to match the 2-1s that you guys made, but I think 2-0. But I think it's going to be just two of the worst goals you'll see, like two sloppy goals. I'll take them, but it's going to be two
worse than the Birmingham goals.
One of that? No, yeah. But I think it'll be two sloppy goals. I want to go for an Isak tap in, and then we're going to just get a scrappy corner goal, which again I'll take. But we'll go for something like Dan Burn or something like that to score for that one. But yeah, 2-0, and we'll take that.
What we haven't touched on, Scott, is the right back position. Does Trips keep his spot, or does Tino come in? I'm quickly going to say I think we'll see Tino come back, and I think Eddie Howe showed it with them half-time substitutions at City that he wasn't happy with certain performances. I mean, you go from Trips. Well, you had Trips that had a fantastic game against Arsenal, probably one of the best players on the field that night. Then obviously two mistakes against Manchester City. Then I think we'll see Tino back in.
I think in his interview how he didn't call him out, but he said, the first goal was a really basic defensive situation that we didn't deal with, which really means Trippier just was terrible for it. Yeah. But we've seen him do that a few times recently. I mean, he let Mudryk score, which is that was sackable.
Yeah, no, I think Tino will come back in. I also think we might see a potential rest of Anthony Gordon, because he didn't look too fit on the right. I know we haven't gone through the full team, but I think if Harvey Barnes is potentially back, we might see him play a half, and then Gordon will come on second half.
Nah, Gordon will be starting, man. Don't you worry about that.
It depends if he's fit or not. I don't know. He just didn't look right, but half the team didn't look right on last week.
Yeah.
So
Gordon will be starting. I think he was just in a bit of huff.
A bit of a huff. I think all the half the team were in a bit of a huff. Anyways, let us know in the comments below what you think your prediction is going to be for this game. Forest fans, we normally get a ton of yous in the comments for these games, so let us know how you think this game's going to go. Let us know your predictions. Let us know how your season's going. You must be on cloud number 9 or whatever tree top you're in, because obviously Forest fans and all that sort of stuff. So let us know. I don't know. I'm trying to make a pun.
Nice, Scott, nailed that.
No, doesn't matter. But let me know in the comments how your season's going, how you are enjoying this, and where do you think you're going to finish? What you're going to take as an absolute minimum for this season? Will you be happy with conference like the other lads on that other Forest podcast, or is it going to be Champions League or nothing for you guys? You deserve it. You're up there. You should be. But let's go there together. Let's join Newcastle and Nottingham Forest in the Champions League. That'll be class. While you're there, if you hit the little thumbs up button, that'll get this video in the feeds of other fans and other football fans' YouTube feeds. And if you want to go one step further, you can become a subscriber. Hit the notification bell to get notified when more of our videos go live on the channel. And if you want to go even further than that, you can become a member. It tells you just down there, look, $2.99 a month. And that gets you early access and exclusive access to other videos and podcasts throughout the season. We've just posted a new episode of Canny Chatter. There's Your Smiling Faces podcast, and there'll be match reactions and match previews throughout the rest of the season as well. I've run out of air. I can't speak anymore, boys. Anything that anybody wants to add before we wrap this one up?
No, I think we've covered all topics, mate.
All bases covered. Excellent. Well, let's hope we can go back to St. James's Park and get another 3 points on the board. We'll see you all in the next one. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Bye.